See, what am I fear?
There you
Right now I have a fear of not being able to find my true purpose, frankly.
go.
That's it in a nutshell. That's why I'm here. That's why I'm doing a lot of inner work, and I'm blessed to be able to do this inner work. So, yeah, that's a big one. Does that answer your question, Michael? Good to see you, my man.
I see. I put you on the spot. I was just messing with you.
No, it's all good. I like being put on the spot. Gets me out of my comfort zone. If I'm in my
That's one of the
comfort zone,
purposes of fear.
yeah, if I'm in my comfort zone, I'm never gonna grow.
Yeah, anywhere.
That's what I tell people in interviews. I'm comfortable being uncomfortable.
All right, I'll throw it back to you then, Mr. Grasso. What do you fear of?
Oh, that's Pandora's box, man.
Yeah, bucket of worms.
Bucket of worms. Right now, that's a big loaded question. Fear of failure, fear of success, fear of not knowing everything, because I'm going into a great big old scary thing. But I'm comfortable being uncomfortable, and I will get used to it, and I will face it. That I know. My biggest fear is I'm going to be in, oh, I can't believe I'm going to say this on a recorded line, no less. But I'm going to be in close proximity to somebody that I didn't anticipate being in close proximity to. And we broke up a year and a half ago. And I have a fear of running into this person. I am by no means reaching out to this person, but I don't know how react if I see her.
Sometimes, in my experience, the anticipation of the event can create more anxiety and fear of the actual event. That's my 2 cents.
I'll give you a quarter for that.
Yeah. Thanks, man. Making money today.
As value.
It's true. It's true. I believe it's true.
Get in our heads, man. Start running those narratives, and it's off to the races.
Oh, the hamster is busy on his wheel with the carrot dangling in front of him, and that's exactly where I'm at.
But the good thing is that as humans on this call right now, we've stated the fact and we're aware of it. So how do we put that practice into work, Miss St. Joseph?
He's the point man.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, I'm throwing it back. I feel like I've taken control. I got to give up.
There you go. Oh, no worries. No worries at all. That's good. Well, what I do in a case like Michael's case is I will go through it in my head and even maybe have a picture of the person or something and go through the different scenarios so that no matter what comes up, I have an answer for it. It's not like when you see them, you're like, ah, and then afterwards, after they're not in front of you anymore, you're like, oh, I should have said, because you already have, your subconscious is already working on it.
Yeah.
The way I'm going to react, this is what I'm going to say. I'm going to be very calm. I'm going to keep my blood pressure down. I'm going to act like they are nothing. No big thing. Hey, how you doing? That's it. And if you practice it, you get your body ready for it. Whereas if you worry about it, you're looking at it in a different way. You're feeding it different energy. You want to feed it confidence and that, hey, look how far I've come since you, and you really don't matter anymore to me. It's okay. I'm healing, whether I'm healed fully or not. I'm healing. You were a great lesson, and that's your place in my life in the past. And I don't have to speak to anything or answer to anything because I'm awesome. My life is awesome. I'm doing awesome. And I'm so glad we're not together.
And I've done that. I have bigger fish to fry with the career front anyway. So that's kind of squeezing that whole thing to the side.
Yeah. And there's several ladies who'd be more than willing to drive up there and you can show them off. Different girl every night if you wanted it.
That's
So,
just more. That's
I've
giving
done
him
more.
more trouble.
That's true. That is true.
Sage advice though. Prior to that,
Yeah.
Hopefully she didn't find him on Craigslist.
On what? On Facebook?
Craigslist, I think.
Oh, Craigslist?
Craigslist.
Oh my
Hopefully
God,
Geraldine
that's
didn't
like,
find the ladies on Craigslist.
that's like,
Yeah.
oh
No,
my-
no.
that's like,
They would all be very good looking friends. He wouldn't have to pay any of them. He'd just have to fix their computers every now and then.
I live by a rule right now. My rule is I would rather be relatively happy alone than miserable with someone. And that's how I live my life.
That is a good adage, because if you're not happy being by yourself, adding another person to the formula is not helpful.
No.
Does not work.
But now I got bigger fish to fry with the whole career front. So,
That is great. Elaine, you're the one who got us on this kick before everybody else came on. What would you say is a major fear that you would like to face?
Well, actually, I've been thinking because I've recently moved, right? Well, since February, but I haven't gotten things settled, and that there are several projects I've been wanting to embark on, but I just haven't done anything, including my meditation and all that, my daily routine. And I'm just wondering if that is part of self-sabotage. Because I kept waiting for, like the inspiration to do things or something like that. But then when I finally do get inspiration to do things, I'm gonna get sick. And then, like it takes a few days to recuperate, and then you're back from the beginning, like to set your routine up.
That is 100% self-sabotage, my dear. Yes. Yes, 100%. Because probably as you start doing it, you start thinking, God bless you, I hope I don't get sick. Am I going to get sick? I think I'm feeling sick. My throat is scratched, or my eye, what's going? I think I'm sick. And then you just talk yourself into it. And your body's like, oh, she needs another break. Let's get sick. And it wears down to give you that pullback.
Because I don't understand the energy enough, so that I do get affected.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, and then when I get affected, and then if I haven't done my meditation and stuff regularly, I do often get ill from it.
Yeah. So what you would want to work on is building up your own energetic. And as we build up our own energetic and we get bigger and our energy is a higher resonance, what happens is we become more in tune with the things around us. The thing is being able to acknowledge that, but not pulling it into your energy. So like right now, Mercury's in retrograde, and a lot of people see Mercury retrograde as like, like they go nuts. So Mercury retrograde, what that normally means is problems with travel, problems with any kind of documentation. If you're signing contracts, don't buy a house, you don't want to start a business, all these things you do not do under Mercury retrograde. Unless the Mercury retrograde in your natal chart, then it works different for you. But people will focus on that to the point that they start creating all these issues because they're expecting it to happen. So then they filter for it. They're looking for it. And they make it happen. So when I talk about Mercury retrograde, I like Mercury retrograde because I usually make a lot more money during Mercury retrograde because everybody's like, so they all call me. And Mercury retrograde is actually very good for completing projects. So like Michael, if Michael had just heard about his job and he didn't sign his contract yet, or there was something else to finish up, because it's finishing up, you're okay. But if you're beginning, like if you're just going to settlement on a house or you're doing something like that, that's not good, because then you have to really look at the contract, which you always should do so anyway. But that's when miscommunications happen. That's what Mercury's very well known for.
So Elaine, is your issue more maybe also analysis paralysis, because you're trying to do too many things and trying to figure out how am I going to do all of this?
Well, basically put everything aside, but there are quite a few things. Because
Right.
I've been taking a break from work since last August. So
So wouldn't it be maybe easier to bite a smaller chunk and just do one thing kind of consistently or regularly that doesn't consume an enormous amount of time, so that you can focus and then build from there?
yeah, that's what I tell myself, but my body isn't moving.
Just trying to help.
We can all relate.
Thank you. It is something that I should remind myself constantly. Yeah, thank you.
Well, don't should all over yourself, because should doesn't count. It's either you do it or you don't do it. There's no try. We say there is no should. Don't should all over yourself. The other thing is, there have been studies where there is no try. Very good. There have been studies done where they find that if somebody is trying to change their life, like somebody is like coming out, or they're trying to make a big change in their life, when they try to do it incrementally, it doesn't work. They always fall back. If they do it all at the same time and just commit to that, it tends to work better. So although it goes against like logically what you would think it is, it doesn't, it's not reality.
It forces you
And
to.
do everything. Yeah, because it does. It forces you to adjust. Just like if you're going to move somewhere new, you don't like go stay on the weekends. Then you go for maybe 4 days a week. Then you go maybe 5 days a week. You go. And you plant yourself there and you say, I'm doing. And you face the fear of doing it. And you overcome whatever obstacles are put in your way, because you put yourself in a situation where you kind of have to. Just imagine that I know this is what's best for me. I know this is what I have to do. I'm going to do this. And
I think like part of my head is thinking, is this the best thing? Like, is this the best way? Is this the best time? Is this like that? And so I kept trying to figure out, or like trying to feel if there is a good feel about it. But because there's so many little things, because I'm trying to figure out how to live my life, basically. So everything is new. Because previously, I've just devoted my whole self to work, occasionally friends and family. So I really don't know how to live my life, what I actually like. Like, do I like gardening? Do I sort of thing? So yeah, I guess it's the fear of, am I doing something wrong? Yeah.
That's the fear of failure, right?
Yeah.
Because there is no best time. The best time is right now. There is no best thing. The best thing is whatever you're doing right now, and then try things, because that's the only way you're going to figure out which one resonates with you the most.
Right. Fail fast and fail often.
Yeah, that's what every successful person ever has said.
Well, they say the greatest teacher is failure, right?
Mm-hmm. So you take it and you learn from it. Wanda, give us your wisdom.
Wisdom on fear? Well, I've been working 11 years on one fear I've had for a long time. And I wrote him a letter. I burned it, sent it to Spirit, because he passed away in 2010, my husband.
Okay.
So then I met someone and I moved in with him, and it didn't work out because I didn't realize The fear I had was to lose someone else again.
Oh, mm-hmm.
Okay. So now I've been living on my own for 4 years, working on myself with all this fear of loss of someone that you give your heart to, and they're gone, and it took a lot of time, a lot of patience, a lot of crying, and plus seeing a psychologist, which helped, you know what I mean? But I came to a realization from that fear of loss that, he had a journey to go on too. It wasn't just me. And I knew I was being selfish because I didn't want him to leave, So I had to realize, hey, he had his journey, and this was his path that he made a contract to do. And, I know he's still there. He's in spirit, and his body might be not here, but he's still alive. We don't die. So I came to a realization with that fear that, we don't die. We are eternal beings, and it's okay. We can mourn for our loss, but to stay there as long as I did was not good, and I had a lot of work that I had to do for myself, my inner self, and my inner child, get deeper within myself. And that's what I did. And I mean, I still have a little bit of fear being in a relationship, and if they do, but it's okay,
Mm-hmm.
But this was a lesson I had to learn in this lifetime.
So here's the question. Is it better to have loved than lost?
Yes, it is.
Loved at all? Like that's where the balance is out. Because it's the same thing when you have children. So you have a child. Are they going to remain a child? No.
No.
Is something going to happen to them when they're young? I mean, I think that's like a huge fear for parents who really love their kids. And then as they grow, are they going to grow into someone that you are proud of? Are they going to grow into someone that you're still close to? Are you going to have a relationship? And all those fears, like, do you not have children because there's this potential? Like wise words my mother once told me were, don't ever have kids because they grow up to have minds of their own. Okay. Isn't that the point? Apparently not. But if you have that kind of a mindset that you want people in a container, you want your loved ones in a container so that you can rely on them, you can pull them out when you need them, then you are fraught with discouragement and disillusionment and pain. So having that kind of fear, it doesn't allow for growth, your growth or theirs. So that fear of loss is okay because loss is inevitable.
Right.
At some point, no matter how good somebody is, they will let you down. At some point, it's human. The question is it worth the risk? And most people would say, yeah, it's worth the risk, because even if we're only together for a year, for 2 years, for 10 years, you still have all that time where you're growing and you're enjoying each other and you're supporting one another and things are good, or you hope they're good.
Right.
So, all right, Stephanie. I was trying to think, it was Wanda's wisdom. What can Stephanie be? Stephanie's
Oh, don't worry
spicy
about
life.
it. No, my life isn't that interesting. On the note of what you were just saying about having kids, one of my brothers told us a joke yesterday at my parents' Memorial Day get together.
Mhm.
It was pretty funny. That teenagers were put here so that we know how God feels, because it's something we created that denies our existence. I thought that was
That's
funny.
good. That's good.
Anyway, I know that I have some deep-seated fears I don't know if any of them are irrational. Maybe some of them are blown out of proportion. I mean, most of my fears come down to whether or not my kids will be provided for ultimately and safe and all that.
That's huge
So,
with kids. And I always qualify with kids that you love or that you love your children, because I have been around parents who really could care less. It was about them. And their kids were born to serve them and had nothing to do with the kids' growth. But when you're
yeah, I've seen a couple of
your
those.
kids, yeah. Yeah, unfortunately that exists. But that is a big fear. But what can we do with that? Do you think that's meant to teach you something? Do you think that's so you teach them something? What do you think what purpose does that fear serve?
I don't know. I mean, it's certainly driven a lot of the decisions that I've made,
Mm-hmm.
hopefully for the better. I've been surprised how many other women haven't made it out of abusive relationships in spite of their kids being in danger.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, and several counselors down through the years have commented on that as if it's like unusual. And I thought they were weird at first, and more as I get older, I'm realizing it's actually not as common as I would like to believe it is, which is really sad.
Yeah. Well, a lot of times they don't want to leave because then you have that potential of when you go to court that your kids have to be alone with that person. So you're not there to protect them and you have to hand them over. And it's like,
Yeah.
what do you do? Legally, there's nothing you can do about it. So rather than be put in that situation, you just stay in the relationship so that at least you're there with them. You know?
Yeah, that's true. And I was very, very fortunate in that situation because he had so many drug problems that there was no way the courts were going to ever give him any. So,
Can I say something about that? Some women in abusive relationship don't feel worthy. So when they don't feel worthy of themselves, they take on the abuse. And they shouldn't, because they are worthy of being here. My first husband was very abusive, I know. So, and at that time I didn't feel worthy. I just felt that's who I could end up with. That's the only person I could be with. And that's
And they
not,
convince you of that too.
yes, they do.
That's
And
part of the
it's
abusive
terrible.
cycle.
It's terrible.
yeah.
And Matt Kahn said, whatever you think of me is none of my business. I love it.
Yeah, to me, that's like the greatest. It's none of your business what anybody else thinks of you. Stop obsessing over that. Care more about what you think of you. Are you standing in your integrity? Are you doing your soul's work and what your soul wants you to do? So, hello, Sue and Nadawan, to bring you guys up to speed. Today, we're talking about fear. It was an impromptu thing because apparently we didn't put anything up for this week. I guess I was going to take off because we just spoke on Thursday and I had a brain fart. So I just let everybody know that we were coming on today. So, Nadawan, do you have any fears that you would like to talk about that we could, put all of our heads together and figure out how to face it?
I think everything everyone touches on, I could resonate in all front, what Elaine said about perfection, like fear that you're not doing everything so perfectly, every little mistakes is going to set you back. And now that on its own is your setback. Like I resonate a lot with that.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, like fear of, I don't know, especially when, I can't, and I don't mean to offend anyone. So when you talked about children, I don't have children, but I have pets.
Mm-hmm.
And knowing that they will pass, and it's like, because their lifespans are so much shorter than yours, like
Mm-hmm.
knowing that the morning is coming you know, for sure, and all that stuff. So that, not children per se, but yeah, but that kind of resonate with me too.
Well, it's a family member that you love.
Right. Yeah.
And you're responsible for them too.
Yeah. I think
At
this
another level.
this past year, well, a couple years, I think the fear that I've been working on is around being authentic, like truly being myself, and not, because, you know, like I come from many cultures, so I learned to be a chameleon, like in all, like if I'm with my Asian folks, I'm one way. If I'm with my American friends, I'm another way, you know, like if I'm with people from school and with people from work, like everything's a different world. And I learned to be chameleons just to, I don't know, blend in and everything. So this past couple of years is about being authentic. And if they don't like who I am, then they're not meant to be my friends. But, you know, so, but I think around that is what I'm working on this past couple of years. Yeah.
So one of the things about being authentic, it doesn't mean being rude or not being tactful. I think a lot of people think, well, I'm just being authentic, so you got to deal with me as I am. Kind of. It's also about being acknowledging like who you're around and how they feel, and opening up a dialogue instead of just throwing your crap on them, so to speak.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people have a misunderstanding of that balance. So no, you're not going to act the same way when you're in a corporate setting as you are when you're home or you're out with your friends. And it doesn't mean that you're a chameleon. It just means that there's a professional manner in which you have to navigate that world. And then you can be yourself around your real friends. Like that.
Right.
That's someplace where you can be more relaxed. And maybe when you're around like your grandparents, you don't talk like a sailor, but when you're around your friends, you do. That also has nothing to do with authenticity. Authenticity has more to do with having your boundaries, standing up for what you know is right and correct, and not allowing yourself to be pushed with the tide. So like here in America, it's like horrible how many bandwagons come past, and there's some people just jump on and jump off and jump on and jump off. It's like, do you not, like, they don't research anything. It's just like, we're cancel culture, we're doing this, we're doing that, and they just follow like sheep. And that's why they're called the sheeple, because they have no idea which direction they're going in. They don't know why they're going in that direction, and they just follow. Now that's a real chameleon, is somebody who, wherever they're plopped, they're going to hone in on whoever the alpha is or whatever.
Right.
That's who they're going to be like. And when they get into a relationship, they totally lose who they are, because they're whoever that person wants to be, instead of just being who they are. And that's why a lot of relationships don't last, is because if you have two people coming in doing the same thing, well, what do you want? 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 Nobody gets what they want, and nobody is satisfied. And then when your real face comes out, as it does eventually, then you feel betrayed and disillusioned because you're not who you said you were. Well, it's because you're both playing a game. If you go in from first date and this is who I am, and just be you and not worry about whether or not they like you, it's not a job interview. And even at a job interview, I mean, you know, Michael, you go to a job interview, you go in confident. You're like, you would be so lucky to get me as an employee. I can make you so much money. I could do all these different things, and I know my worth. I know my value.
Well, I mean, and think about that. So, you know, I know it's a recorded line, but I'm going to put it
I
in.
can pause it.
Huh?
Do you want me to pause it?
No, I don't care.
Okay.
I don't care. This is real life, and that's what I did. Over the summer, I was working at Home Depot. I was a customer service rep. I had worked for Microsoft for 17 years. I worked for Dell. I worked for Microsoft Partners. For 2 years, I didn't work. And then COVID hit, and I've been interviewing. I've been over 1,000 interviews, 1,000, okay? And I could not find work to save my life. I wound up going to work at Home Depot. And I figured, you know what, I got to do something. So I was a customer service rep at Home Depot. Then suddenly a friend of mine called me in November, end of October, November, and said, hey, we got this gig. Now I'm in the technology industry. So I went to work. I took a step up to be a help desk representative for a children's hospital. Maybe I shouldn't put all the names out there. But I mean, I've got a lot of experience. And then many of the countless interviews, and I do mean countless, I start a new job on Monday as the technology strategist for the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania for Microsoft. So thank you. So yeah, I'm happy. I'm scared. I may be face to face with the governor, the CIO of the Commonwealth, and God knows whoever else, right? And this is a guy who last summer was working at Home Depot, right? So you suck up your pride and you do what you got to do. But I agree with Geraldine that you don't need to put on airs about who you are. You know what I mean? Be true to yourself. And that was very true in all my interviews. I told them like it was. I was very forthcoming, and I'm comfortable being uncomfortable. You throw me in and tell me I'm not comfortable being uncomfortable. I'm very comfortable being uncomfortable. You know, used to dealing with business executives, and then you got, you know, I don't know, Joe Schmo down the street who has a problem with his toilet seat cover and taking that back. I'm sorry, but you opened it. We can't take it back. God knows if you sat on it or whatever else. Yeah, I don't know. But did that get to you, Stephanie? But I mean, seriously, I mean, you know, and then I went to dealing with executives at Chopaget. So you kind of roll with it. I don't think it's being a chameleon. I think it's addressing your audience.
Being adaptable.
You know, what's that?
Being adaptable.
Yeah, definitely being adaptable, flexible, and, you know, addressing your audience. You know, if you're talking to an exec, you talk exec, right? If you're talking to Joe Schmo who used his toilet seat, well, you talk to that shithead. And yes, I'm a sailor, so.
I kind of relate to Nathawan's things in a different way, because I'm Taiwanese, but from the age of 10, I grew up in Philippines, which is strongly under American influence, but not totally American. So I never really identified Taiwan, Philippines, or American as my home. And coming back to Taiwan, there are a lot of difficulties because people know I've been abroad. So people are like, why aren't you more open? Or they'll say, you're Taiwanese, how come you're more Taiwanese? And then for me, like speaking from my heart, people would just like, normally in Western culture, they'll just say, oh, this is your personality, the way you express yourself. They won't take it personally. But everything I say in Taiwan, often people will say, like, for example, like if I want, because I work with children and I want to have more ideas to contribute to give children to get interested in reading. But the supervisors at the back of their head, they're like thinking, you don't think I'm worthy. And then they project that to me. So every time they have that, I start doubting myself. Am I making people feel bad? And I don't want to make people feel bad. So
here's another really good quote. You can never make yourself enough to make
yeah.
something.
So I think it was really wonderful to go through all of that and find out who I really am and the steps that you want to, even in whatever culture or circumstances, you want to present yourself. Because the culture mainstream isn't always the right way. You still have to identify who you really are. But it is a really cool journey after you've come out of it.
And it's very real. And I don't know that any one of us honestly could truly relate to that. having lived in different cultures, maybe Geraldine a little bit in Hawaii, but I don't know about anywhere else, right? Like,
Hawaii, Colorado's weird.
yeah, but
It should
yeah,
be completely different countries as you go across.
well, I mean, we say that, but still, it's American. It's America, right? So there's much commonality there. It's a little bit less than, you know, Taiwanese versus Philippines versus Japan versus China or whatever else. And then being in this country, right, where we have such major issues that have been brought to light, at least in the past year, which are very, 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 very real. And, you know, there are people that just have different mindsets. So I think it goes back to what Geraldine was saying earlier. You have to be true to yourself and stand strong for yourself and respect yourself. And it doesn't matter what everyone else thinks about you, but present yourself in the best possible light that you can. Articulate what you can in an effective way for them.
It's very helpful for me to hear people talking about this. I have an adopted daughter. She was born in China. And she's going through, I mean, she just graduated from college, but I feel like her entire life she's gone through this sort of identity crisis kind of stuff or whatever, just who am I? And, you know, I look Asian, I'm being raised by a Polish mother, I'm, you know, I identify, you know, her friends are Asian and Black and, you know, very few Caucasian friends, I want to say, although yes, she has them, but, you know, so you kind of see where she identifies. You know, we've gone back to China, we've, you know, done all kinds of things, but it's actually heartening to hear that this is not an uncommon, you know, I guess, journey, because, you know, what I go through is, you know, especially lately, and as she's a young, you know, young woman and in her career and things, and I'm kind of going, was it right for me to bring her to this country? Should I, you know, not have done this adoption? Should I, you know, there, you know, all these questions and things. But I do, in my heart of hearts, believe there's a reason for the two of us to be together and we're on this journey. And, you know, whether it's relationships, whether it's, you know, all the learning from each other, and that it's, you know, I definitely wouldn't change it.
Good.
But anyway, good to hear from people.
That's lovely. It's actually quite common. Like, I have to read a lot about being they call it third culture person. So I have to read a lot about that because there are values that are just so completely different. Like, for example, Asian culture values, say, obedience and like seniority system is pretty tough. Whereas like, in Western culture, it's individualism. Like, you have to be your own person. And when you have two families that are both Asian and white, and you are sitting in the middle, not knowing then, like, how do I make myself comfortable while I could also not disrupt everyone around me? You know, it's a bit of a tough act sometimes. Yeah, so, but I was also referring to a bit of, when I say authentic, it's a little bit silly too, in the sense that I work for an investment bank. So a lot of people in finance kind of value sort of like a fancier lifestyle. And my hobbies are quite simple. I like to garden and I just like being with my dog, and that's kind of it. And not, you know, not wanting to take like all-inclusive fancy vacation overseas like the rest of the peer and the bosses and all that stuff sometimes is a little bit tough, just to say, oh, I plant a tomato and just get like a side eyes, you know? So, or or sometimes my like political views where I want like, because I'm a third culture person, I am pro like being inclusive, and I'm pro like equity and all that stuff. So a lot of times being in a very white male dominant culture, that's a really tough thing to say and stand in my truth. So, but I think Geraldine and Michael too, are very right. Like a lot of that is just me owning my own power. Now, well, this is who I am, like, and I have the right to think and do what I believe in. And, you know, I don't need to convince you, you know, and, you know, like you can be you and I can be me. Like there's a separation between, you know, you are you as a being versus me as a being. We don't need to agree on everything, you know. So that's a lot of like embracing my own power in that too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
There's this challenge in the corporate culture too, though, and I've experienced that, right? You know, I'm not, I don't know if I'm white or blue collar. I mean, I'm like a lighter blue collar, I guess. But, you know, I don't have the white collar education, the high level education that people have. I have the sweat on my back or my brow and the hard work that I've put in. That's what I've got. Those are my accomplishments. But to move up in that, you know, enterprise world, organizational corporate structure is the word I was looking for. There, you have to find one thing that you kind of relate to have that social interaction with them to move up. It's not like I'm going to go hop on my Harley with the CIO and go right. Although there are some that ride. Sue, I just can't even relate. I've never been married and don't have any kids, so I'm at a loss. But you know, on the other topic of mixed culture, I mean, I think we need to stand strong in who we are and enjoy what we do, or make new friends like Elaine and Nadawan who want to garden.
No, but I think there's a lot of truth in what Elaine said too, that like it's such a difficult thing to go through, but at the end of the day, you are given zero choice but to find out who you are, because you are now exposed to like 15 different cultures and you have to figure out like which one you identified with on each individual things. And, you know, like, for example, like religion, like, you know.
But I think, honestly, I think everybody, no matter who you are, has to deal with that. Everybody's got to find their own self and their own way and their own interest, and they got to stand up for themselves. I'm sorry, I'm very, very vocal, aren't I? But
That's fine. Stop apologizing for being who you are.
well, but I want
No, I think it's beautiful. I think that everyone should, and like eventually everyone will. I think being in a multicultural setting, you have to do that from age of 5 instead of maybe at the age of 30, you know, when you're kind of grown up in a bit more
factor too, right? There are many people that are just coming to this country also. Or, you know, I don't know, Elaine, when did you come? Did you come at 5 or did you come at
Taiwan.
I'm sorry?
She's Taiwanese.
She lives in Taiwan.
Oh, you're in Taiwan.
Yeah.
Country through Zoom.
Yes.
So,
Wow.
yeah, so it's like 8 a.m. here.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Wow.
she was just eating breakfast.
Yeah.
But
But
having your evening
think-
tea,
I
not your
think-
morning coffee.
I think growing up in mixed cultures, I think it just forces us to really look at ourselves a lot more.
Yeah.
And so it is difficult because you're confronted with the challenge and people being critical of you in a different way. But also, like if you come out of it, so much more fruitful because you do find yourself, like as opposed to people who went through their whole life and not really identifying who they actually are.
But you had mentioned Taiwan and the Philippines. So were you raised in the
So,
Philippines and lived?
no, I grew up, well, I was born in Taiwan. My family moved to the Philippines, but but then I was in an American school in Philippines. So until I finished high school, and then I moved to London, and then to Canada. So,
Wow.
and then now I'm back in Taiwan.
I'm speechless.
So I'm a bit similar to that. You know, I guess I was raised here in the US, but through work and everything, I have to live in London for almost 3 years. And also I have ties back in Thailand, Malaysia, and Singapore. So I'm in those countries quite a bit too. So being in all sort of ways, people do stereotype you and box you in certain way. When I'm in London, everyone just thinks I'm American, sometimes Canadian, weirdly enough.
Because our accent.
When I'm in America, everyone's like, oh, you're Asian. But when I'm in Asia country, they're like, oh, but you are like a mixed person from America. It's
Right,
a little
right, right.
yeah.
Like
So
your
I know.
identity is pushed into your face.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like people are trying to tag you with an identity instead of you being able to express who you are.
Yeah, so it would have been nice if somebody, like when I was younger, somebody would tell me, you just find the part that you want to become
Right.
from each experience and culture, and that's who you are.
So I'm going to ask a question about those of us here in America. Do you guys all know what generation American you are? Like on the sides? So you're second generation American on both sides of your family? From everybody, Michael?
Yeah, my grandparents on both sides are off the boat from Italy, but I don't speak Italian.
I'm sure you know the curse word.
Well, I am a sailor, so I can cuss in Italian.
Yeah. We all know the curse words if we were brought up in any kind of Italian environment. So Sue, where are you?
I'm second generation also. My grandparents all came from Poland.
Wow, pure breeds.
Me?
Stephen, sure.
Okay. Second generation.
On both sides?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, how about you, Stephanie?
I guess I'm the oddball because my mom's family, I know, has at least parts of it, the branches we can trace back, have been here since the Revolutionary War.
Wow.
And on my dad's side, my aunt's done a lot of research, but I don't know all of it. But I know it goes back beyond the Civil War because one half of his family was plantation owners, and they migrated to California after the Civil War because they lost everything. So,
How about you, Wanda?
Well, I just went through Ancestry.com and I'm waiting for the results. There you go.
So I have like, my father's parents were an arranged marriage. They're both from Romania, so I'm second generation there. And then my mom is what we call a greasy harp, which is Italian and Irish. Her father was, I think, first generation American, and her mother was first generation American. So on that side too, but it's like Ireland, where my grandfather's family got run out of Ireland, from what I understand, because if you mention the name, you get like thrown out of different cities and stuff still. And my mother's family, the Italian side, and like my grandfather, I remember him, my great grandfather rather, I remember him speaking Italian and everything like that. He was a very imposing man. He lived till he was like 90. And but the fact that my grandparents on my father's side, that it was an arranged marriage because my grandfather's sisters felt that he was getting too old not to be married. He was 29. And he needed to marry a nice Romanian girl, which, I mean, there's just tons of us everywhere. So they found my grandmother in Pennsylvania. My grandmother was only 15 years old and my grandfather was 29 when they got married. Yes. And my grandfather waited till my grandmother was ready to consummate the marriage. So she was 19 when they consummated the marriage. Then they had 10
Well,
kids.
good for him. Sounds like he was a good husband at least.
He was like, the story she used to tell me, he just was very, very unusual for the time. Like he didn't drink. It was all about the family. So I'm very proud of my grandfather. I never got to meet him, but I'm told I look a lot like him. I'm very Romanian looking. So that's kind of interesting. So how scary would that be to be a 15-year-old sitting on a porch with traffic going by, not knowing which one of those people is judging you based on what you look like to see whether or not you're pretty enough to marry? After you've been brought up from a different state, you're around people you don't know. I mean, I can't even imagine what my grandmother was going through. She did not see him or meet him until they were on the altar. That was the first time she met him. And she was terrified when they, after everything was done, they were supposed to go to bed. And he just like, I know you're afraid. And I know that you don't know me. You don't love me yet, but someday you will. And when you're ready is when this will happen. He said, I will never touch you without your consent. I mean, really, to be from the old country and have the values and to look at things in that way, that's amazing to me. So that's about really standing in your truth, because his parents were all about, like, my grandmother had to have a demonic entity in her that she was not having kids. And they were married for so long. My grandfather just always stood up for her, and when it's time, it'll happen. He didn't tell them that they didn't consummate, but he was like, get off my wife's back, leave her be. So that's huge.
That is huge.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Our family are just so amazing. That's why I'm single. Because I have amazing men around me all the time. And I'm like, they're all related to me. What is up with this? This is not good. So Sue, you talked a little bit about your daughter and finding her place, and we're talking about authenticity. Is there anything outside of that, or that you want to add to that, about fear? And what do you do when you face, or when you come up against something that really scares you?
Good question. What do I do? And I feel like it is all about confidence and realizing. I think I've gotten to the point where I realize that I have a lot to offer in all aspects of my life, and I'm, it's good, so be confident in that. Of course, there are times when I'm thinking, oh, I'm not good enough, but, trying to remember that I think I'm here to work on relationships, which I'm really bad at.
We got your back.
Too abrupt, who knows. But this lifetime is I think I'm going to live a long, long time because I'm a slow learner.
That's a good way to look at it. I still have stuff to do. Has anybody not? Go ahead, Stephanie.
I was going to say, I'm glad that some of the Asian ladies here talked about their experience, because I have a friend who migrated here from Japan to get out of an abusive relationship, and she's really struggled. She has 4 kids, and the school district doesn't give her any support, which surprises me because they've been so supportive of my daughter. And there's a person in the school district whose son victimized her daughter, and they're like in with all the right people because they're like a little one family mafia. I hate them. And So I feel like they've just caused her to be ostracized by everyone, and it makes me really angry. The school called CYS on her this weekend because she accused them of doing things like they wouldn't honor the therapist's note that said her daughter doesn't have to participate in gym class because she gets bullied. So she said they were going to be causing harm to her daughter. And I think they sort of took advantage of the language barrier because, you know, Asian grammar structure is different than English. And so they made it sound to the police like she was threatening to harm her children. So I was able to, fortunately, to keep the kids for a little while until she had a chance to talk to a psychiatrist, and they let her come back home the same day. And I hope she gets more support now, but it just is very upsetting because there's not really a Japanese community here. And even though there's an Asian community in our school district, I think the Japanese maybe aren't very popular sometimes with the other Asian communities. And she really needs help. So I've tried not to get involved in her business at all and keep the friendship very casual because the language barrier and the cultural barrier makes me uncomfortable. So I'm going to try not to do that anymore. I mean, she needs somebody, and even if I don't know how to communicate with her very well, I'll just have to learn as I go. So.
And it's amazing how well you can communicate when it's something that's emotional, how well you can communicate without having to understand the words. That it comes in so many other ways. And just like giving a hug or just showing support in some way, or just standing up for her to the school. I can be like, no, you're not doing this, or trying to figure out where she can get help. Like trying to find a counselor, someone, even if they don't speak Japanese, who can help her get the things that she needs and protect the kids, because that is horrible. It's just, and it happens, unfortunately, all over the place, because there's a friend of mine in California whose daughter is getting accosted by boys who were like grabbing her and stuff at school in high school. And when they reported it, they didn't even want to tell the parents. I was like, no, wait a second, that's assault. You need to not only report it to the parents, that needs to go to the police. Oh, well, they were just playing. That's not play. That's not acceptable. So to bring it to the authorities that need to see it, and to do so in such a way, like maybe what we need to do is look at the school board, and somebody needs to approach the school board and say, look, this is going on. We have it documented. If you don't take care of it, the newspaper is going to get it. And then it's really going to be documented. So
The school board needs to talk to the parents, and the parents need a paddle.
yep. Yeah. There needs to be,
Probably a
because
good thing
that's,
I'd never had kids, because I'd probably beat them if they did anything like that.
yeah.
Yeah.
I've had to go to the school when there's been bullying situations. I always worked at the schools where my child went to school, so that I knew all the kids, and I knew the teachers, and I knew the principal and stuff. And we had
That's what the perpetrator's family does, unfortunately.
well, and then everybody else needs to do it too, though. You got to be stronger than them. You got to build up that text, because if they're the ones who are helping, then of course the school knows them. They're going to stand behind them. But like my kids' class, we were known to have the most amount of parent participation all the way up through the grades, all through middle school. And middle school usually drops off. And actually they tried to stop us from participating, because in the beginning of the school year, they're like, oh yeah, and this is when your kids need you the most. And if you can volunteer, blah, blah, blah. And then we went to volunteer and they're like, oh no, we don't need you. You know, we're very, very negative about it. It didn't keep me off the school grounds because the teachers liked me.
I think the challenge here is that the mother is, escaping an abusive relationship from Japan, and we have language barriers and all that. But my question for Stephanie is, isn't there services? So I know that they've changed. It's not It's not called the Department of Public Welfare anymore. It's called the Department of Health and Human Services in the state of Pennsylvania. Aren't there some programs or services available through DHS or the Department of Education available to the parent to kind of help her with this?
I would think so. So
Yeah,
far,
but
she
give them to her.
hasn't seemed to be able to access them, and I hope this will change that now. Now that she's seen this psychiatrist at Crozier, hopefully they'll refer. But I know when they were involved in her daughter's court case, which is still dragging on because of COVID, which is ridiculous because there's no reason why a juvenile case should drag on that long. But she wanted a Japanese interpreter and they refused to provide one, which I don't think is legal. And I tried to tell her that it was illegal, but she didn't want to make a scene. You know, Asian people don't like
that's
to
where
make a
they're,
ruckus about things.
yeah,
And in
That's where the
America, you have
culture
to really
too.
chicken scream and fight to get what you need. Like, if you aren't going to make a ruckus, then the rest of the country is just happy to walk all over you. So,
yeah. And that's why she needs somebody to stand up for her and to show her how to stand up. Because, you know, if you're coming out of an abusive relationship like that, oftentimes emotionally and energetically, you're just torn. You need to be healed. And if you then go into another abusive situation, which is exactly what she's in right now, without any support, she needs somebody who speaks English, who's from here, to take her by the hand and say, this is how you do it. This is where you go. This is what we need to do. This is what you look at. Here, I'll help you fill this out. You know, but to help her do it with her, not just directing her towards the resource, because if she doesn't understand the questions, and let's face it, a lot of that stuff, they write things up in such a way to make it difficult to understand if English is your first language. I mean, I have law in my background, and there's some of those forms I'm like, what the hell are you saying here? What is this? So she definitely needs somebody who's going to go to bat for her. And she,
yeah, I've been afraid that she would think that I was being condescending or rude. But at this point now, I'm more afraid that the school is going to honestly end up causing harm to her kids because they won't be able to get what they need.
you're
So,
a woman. I think if you came at her as a man, she might see it more as condescending or rude, but because you're a woman and you're very soft, you're gentle, your energetic is very gentle and loving and nurturing. And if you just open up your heart and you allow yourself to send that energy out towards her, she's not going to feel that you're rude or condescending. It's going to feel very loving, and she's going to be like, thank you, God. So that's my 2 bits. So, because in Hawaii, I mean, we worked a lot with Japanese and other Asian cultures. The culture there is very Asian in the way things are run. And I was seen as a brute because I'm from Philly and very direct. And
She's Italian when she wants to be.
thank you
So-
for all the links, Michael.
Yeah, I'm posting some links in there, and I don't know if she qualifies as a refugee in Pennsylvania, but if she's escaping an abusive relationship, possibly. I don't work for the government. I just sell to them as a.
Yeah, I think she
mother.
probably would have had to come in as a refugee, but still, there's got to be something she can access.
maybe not. You have to do the research. A lot of times we don't really understand like what the steps are. And then when you look into it, you're like, oh, you know, like, she may qualify for it, whether she came in stating that or not.
She told me once that all the Japanese families who come here go back, who come here to this area at least.
Mhm.
And she doesn't have that option. So she's kind of stuck. And
So there
She's
might
stuck
be
with-
something
without
that
a
you can
community.
dig through in the refugees site. You know, I went a little deeper in the DHS site. So there might be something in the refugees area, but there isn't about the services there that might be able to help. So I don't know. I was just trying to think off the cuff of how I can help you help her or something.
Yeah, you should bring her to Paris study one
Thanks.
day with the kids, and we'll just sit down and have a
I
love
don't know.
fest.
She's clinging pretty tightly to her church, even though they're not as supportive as I feel like a church community ought to be. I don't know if she would want to do anything that would
It
go
doesn't have to be
against
anything
the
metaphysical.
church.
Not anything metaphysical, just to come and sit and have a meal and be around people who are willing to listen to her and support her.
Okay.
That's all.
I'll try
Not
to get her to
necessarily
come
to like the
flea
psychic
market.
fairs or anything. Although I have a lot of Japanese clients, Japanese nationals, so it's huge. Spirituality is much, much bigger there, and it's completely different than it is here.
Yeah.
So, you know, you see. You see. Okay.
Yeah, I've got to start trying to just invite her out to things and do things with her. I don't
Just show her that not everybody,
know.
you know.
I'm like, she got upset with me once because I told her I couldn't understand her on the phone. And she said, I would never tell someone I can't understand them. That's terrible. It's so very rude. And I was really offended because I felt like if I don't tell you that I don't understand you, then you're going to think I did, and I have no idea what you said. So then it's just miscommunication. So now I'm afraid to talk to you.
Yeah.
You know, and so ever since then, I tried to be very hands off so she didn't think that I was being pushy or controlling. But somehow I've got to find a way to help her, and I can't do that by being hands off.
Yeah. Just open your arms and step back. You know, allow her to make the step forward, but it's just making the space so that she can come forward. And let her know that you're willing to help her. You know, it is very different. I mean, in Japan, the language between the men and the women is different. It's spoken differently. The whole language is spoken differently. So if you're a woman
Really?
using different tenses and verbs and different types of language than you are as a man. And like to us, that is like so foreign, but that's the way they speak, and their verbiage is very poetic. I love reading transliterations from English, from Japanese to English, because the way they describe things is just beautiful. I used to work, when I was in Hawaii, we did a map that was all in Japanese. So all of our ads, we had to change them so that they read properly for the Japanese and so that they would understand what we were saying. So it couldn't be, you know, word for word translation. It was a transliteration, so that it was like, instead of saying yellow, it was like the beauty of the sunrise or something like that. It was like, wow, that is great language. So it's just understanding those things and how different a woman's life is in Japan compared to a man's life, and that they don't have the same rights, and they're not living the same kind of a life, and that certain things are required of them. So, which are things that, I mean, women here complain about, but we really don't have the same issues or amount of pressure on us here in America. If we want to mouth off, we can mouth off. It's not like we'll be disowned by our families and things. So okay. So what do you think, Nadawan? You look like you're getting tired.
No, I'm just thinking at like how complex her situation is, you know, being I guess an immigrant who doesn't have friends and family here, coming off of a abusive relationship, and how isolating the experience would be, and having children that she needs to care for as she's still healing and still trying. Because I don't know, like, yeah, it just seems like it's such a complex situation, and I'm sitting here not knowing like what to do, you know, like, yeah. And I think when Stephanie was talking at the beginning, where she said that, like, when she said that I have to acknowledge that language barrier and culture barrier makes me uncomfortable, I was very appreciative of just that sentence, because a lot of time I think people just say that I'm the root cause, like, oh, because you're Asian, that's why, like, you talk funny, or like you have different accent, when in reality it's just that, like, different culture, different accent, different anything makes you uncomfortable. And with just that, I thought that was already really nice, to hear that, like, oh, okay, so that level of self-awareness is there, and I was already appreciative of that through the story. So I'm just like, oh, wow.
Think about how much courage it took for her to pack up and come, especially this far into the United States. I mean, if you're going to go somewhere, Hawaii's a lot of Japanese, parts of California. As you come further this way, there's less and less of that understanding and acceptance.
Right. And having both you and Michael already, like, sending out links, like, oh, here's a link, check this out, and here's might be some ways. And I'm sitting here just still processing it all, like digesting the situation. That's why I'm just sort of like,
Like, whoa.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, I think
that you even have to do that, because what kind of a school is that? That they're so prejudiced and biased that they do that to somebody's kids.
I think it's bias in favor of the perpetrator's family, because they're very popular and they make it a point to be some of the most valuable parent volunteers the school has, so that no one can ever say anything bad about them. And they protect their evil little spawn as much as they can.
Yeah, that's bad. But we'll send good energy through you to her in this situation, try and clear things up, give you strength and guidance. Let your guidance chime in, let her guidance chime in. So, okay. So how's everybody feeling? Are we about done?
Yeah, I think I need to go to bed because it was a really long weekend.
It was a long weekend.
I have about a half an hour before I meditate.
Okay. Well, I was going to say, if we want to end this part, and then whoever wants to hang out, we can do a facing your fear journey or something like that. If you guys are into it, if you want to do something tonight. What do you say, Stephen?
Yes.
Yeah, that would be a good idea. Help ground me again.
So I'm going to end the recording. I'll show you, you'll hear that nasty woman